All right, everybody. Welcome to the 7th masterclass of a series of facilitation masterclasses that I've been hosting and facilitating for your viewing and learning pleasure. For those of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Marli Williams, and I am a master facilitator and trainer of facilitators in helping educators, consultants, coaches, entrepreneurs really up-level your ability to serve through the art of facilitation. It is something that I am passionate about, I geek out about, and I have essentially looked at and reviewed, the past 15 years of experience as a facilitator, experiential educator, and really gleaned and taken what are the things that up level workshops, trainings, and events through who you're being as a facilitator. And so I've created the 5 pillars of transformational facilitation. So my belief is that I know those of you who are out there who lead events, lead workshops, you don't just want people to leave with more information or more content, that you want people to leave transformed, changed, different because of what you have created, what you have facilitated for them, and really taking what are those essential ingredients to your who you're being as a facilitator. And so today what we're going to be talking about is the 4th pillar of transformational facilitation, which is all about interaction and engagement. I think that this is the biggest thing that makes a difference between a presentation where someone's just delivering information and a transformational experience. And so I'm going to be sharing with you my top tips, tools, tricks, and strategies, creative activities, things that I use in my practice as a facilitator in hopes that there are things that you all can use. And I'm going to be doing my best to kind of manage the Facebook live thing we have going on, the chat box. And I love making these, even though we're virtual and people are all over the country, all over the world even, that we can make this as fun and interactive and engaging as possible. So we just have some community agreements that I always like to set. And this is, again, a good thing to do as a facilitator. And I'll make a note that everything I do is something to glean from, meaning today we're not explicitly talking about community agreements, but I'm going to set them because it's just, I like to role model for you what I think is really important, whether you're with a group for an hour, with a group for 4 days, a week, 21 days in the woods, whatever it is. And I keep our community agreements for these super simple. If you've been on these master classes before, the first one is to be open. I know that we have a breadth and depth of experience in the house today. So the being open heart, open mind is that maybe you learn one new thing that changes for your facilitation. And that's my hope, is that you get something, you get what you need, but I invite you to show up with an open heart and open mind, open to learning something new. You wouldn't be here unless you wanted to. So that's our first community agreement. The second one is to be present, right? I'm sure I have 8 screens going on right now. I don't know if, emails and phone calls and all these other things, but if you're going to give your time, the more present you are, the more you're going to get out of it. And so that's the second one, is just to be present and to let go of whatever you need to let go of to get the most out of our time together today. And the third one is all about engagement, right? That's what we're talking about today. So be engaged. If I ask questions, I'm open to, for those of you on Zoom, I can unmute you and you can share your insights or answers to the questions I'll be asking. And for those of you on Facebook Live, I will be trying to look at the chats. But if I don't get to your questions during this the live call, I will respond to them after the call is over, after the masterclass is over. So still ask your questions, both those of you on Zoom, those of you on Facebook, and I will make sure that I address them. Sound good? So we got be open, be present, be engaged. Give yourself a big high five if you're down for that. Boom. Self high five. That's our like commitment, or a thumbs up. Self high fives I know are weird. Thumbs up to those of you on Zoom. I can't see those of you on Facebook, but you can give me like a thumbs up with the like emoji thing. Like thumbs up, community agreements. We're good to go. Ready to rock out our training for today, our masterclass for today. So one of the questions I like to ask at the beginning of any event, any workshop that I'm doing is, what inspired you to be here? I know that if you've been on my master classes before, I ask this question pretty much every time, but I think it's an important one to reconnect people with why they have chosen to take their valuable time, energy, and attention and give it to you. So I would love to hear in the chat box, or you can respond verbally in Zoom, what inspired you to sign up and join us for today's masterclass? So you can just go ahead, type that over in the chat box. If you want to share, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you if you would like to share with everybody what inspired you to be here today. I see a lot of thumbs up in the Facebook chat. This is good. And types of trainings, I'm just going to read some of these. Trainings for university faculty to prepare them to work with students. Awesome. Teaching interviewing skills classes, lots of team meetings, emotional literacy. Like I just love doing these master classes because when I look around the room and who's here, like I'm like, you're my people, you know, like this is who I most, I just feel so lit up to serve you because you are being of service to so many people. And so if I could just like increase your ability to do that even better, like that ripple effect, it just like, it fills me up, lights me up. So Monica says, I'm always inspired by your energy, wisdom, and content. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Slovenia, right? You live in Slovenia? I got it right. Good. We got Slovenia in the house. Like how badass is that? Okay. I just get so excited. Looking to grow as a facilitator, right? And I think when I look around if as a facilitator myself, wanting to continue to learn, develop, and up-level my skills, to be honest, there's not a whole lot out there. That's not like boring AF, like super boring books or really boring YouTube videos. So it's kind of like if you don't see what you want, the invitation is to create it. And that's my intention. That's my hope, is really building this whole platform that I'm calling the Transformational Facilitation Academy. These master classes being a part of that. The retreat that I have coming up on the Oregon coast that is full, that I'm so jazzed about. Getting to be in person for 4 days in a beautiful retreat house with some badass facilitators from around the country. I'm going to talk more about that a little bit later and when the next one's going to be. Yeah, so I feel like so many of you are here to learn and to grow. And for that, I am grateful for just you, who you are in the world, your time, your energy, and the work that you do. So thanks for doing that. The secondary question to this, like, so what inspired you to be here? I want to make sure that this is the most valuable and helpful thing for you. So the second question, before I dive into some of the nuggets and the content that I have prepared for you today, is as you think about the workshops and trainings and events that you facilitate and lead and design, what would you say is your biggest challenge when it comes to specifically facilitating interaction and engagement? So I'll put that question in the chat box. What is your biggest challenge around facilitating interaction and engagement in your events, trainings, and workshops? So if you're on the Facebook thing, you can type in your responses as well. I'll do my best to check those out. But I think it's important to ask, like, what are the things that you're challenged with? And if that question doesn't light you up, maybe you're not challenged. What is something that you hope to learn or get out of this masterclass specifically today? Is there something that you think would be the most helpful for you around this idea of interaction and engagement when it comes to your workshops? So Kelly, what's up? Coming to the retreat. Super stoked. Challenge, how to make a technical, not generally hands-on topic engaging for groups, right? So maybe more is like, I facilitate maybe not super engaging information. So, or, maybe it's technology related, or it's quote unquote dry or boring. And how do I make that fun? How do I make that dynamic? How do I make that interesting and engaging, right? Not over taking up all the space in my anxiety to fill the airtime. Okay, so, as a facilitator, how to powerfully hold space and give space for interaction and engagement. So that's great. What else? I'm often the most senior person in the room, and people who speak up are trying to either tell me what they think I want to hear or what will make them look good. Okay, so part of that might be some of the things we've talked about on other master classes, which we can definitely talk about today, but the idea of building trust and rapport such that people can be real. One of the things I talk a lot about is like how do you facilitate an environment where people can be vulnerageous? I think it takes courage to be real or to share challenges or issues and not just say what they think you want them to say. Did I get that right? Yeah. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is both, I think that facilitation is two parts. There's a lot more than two parts, but like the mindset and the strategy. And the mindset piece, I think, is really a lot about who are you being when you're facilitating. And I know that might sound like on the woo spectrum for some people, but it's like this idea of what shows up when you show up. When you are leading a meeting, leading a training, energetically, who are you being? Because that is, out of all the trainings that I've done, I can give people a handful of exercises to do. But if you aren't in full trust of yourself and in the energy and the essence of like who you are, it's really hard to facilitate that type of real, authentic sharing and connection. Do people feel safe? Can they trust you to be the guide on this journey? When you're leading people through these interactive exercises, I think so many people are worried about saying the right thing, looking good, not messing up. And so how do we create environments where people can show up fully and can engage fully? And part of that is setting those community agreements and expectations on the front end. I know I've said it before. I just, I always like to reinforce that as like, even with your team, and maybe it's like you've been in a team for a long time, how do you reintroduce new expectations? And say, this is how we've been doing it, and this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to shift or change, or what do you need from me as a leader in order to fully show up and contribute your ideas without fear or without risk. And so I think the more that we can engage and interact with our audience, with our employees, with our peers, I think that does build this sense of like you get to, as a facilitator, really co-create whatever the meetings or the trainings that you're facilitating. And like the biggest thing that people tell me about my facilitation, it's not always like, sometimes it's like, yeah, that activity was great. But just like Andy just shared is like, I love how you show up. So my question or a journal prompt for you to visit right now in this moment, you can do like a 30-second quick free write, is as you think about facilitating these interactive and engaging activities and exercises in your own workshops and trainings and meetings, my invitation is to write down and just do like a free write. Don't try to overthink it. Really kind of tune into your heart when you think about this question of how do you want to show up? How do you want to show up? And so, I mean, you can do a fill in the blank if that helps you. Like, I want to show up authentically. And then what does that mean? I want to show up and give my best self, my full energy. I want to give my full attention. Really thinking, I mean, this is such a simple part, but I think it's being more intentional with how we're showing up, knowing how important that actually is. I work with so many facilitators, and I think that I see them getting so caught up in like, did I do the right exercise or the right activity? And it's like, you can mess up and you can make a million mistakes, but if who you're being is like lit up, powerful, engaging, dynamic, energized, it doesn't matter how many mistakes you make, to be honest. Because that's that realness and that authenticity that I think that so many people are craving. It isn't about being perfect, right? And we have, I think, the illusion of perfection. And, if I facilitate the perfect outline in the perfect way, in the perfect order, then it's going to be perfect. And I think that the biggest gift that you can give people is you. And I think that it can be the hardest thing for us to see our greatest gift and gifts in that question of like, what are your strengths and how you're showing up? So just for fun, in the chat box, I would love for you to type, how do you want to show up? So maybe they're words, maybe they're phrases. How do you want to be showing up as you're holding the container, creating the space for people to connect, for people to engage? What does that sound like? What does that look like? What does that feel like for you if you are showing up with like the fullest expression of who you are? So I'd love to hear, or in the chat box, Andy says, start with intent. So you can thrive, be grateful, honor others, and be truly authentic. I love that. And I would have, however you're wanting to show up, be somewhere that you can see before you're about to lead a meeting, before you're about to lead a workshop, is just really reconnecting with your heart. I think that leading and facilitating from the heart is a huge part of facilitating transformational workshops and experiences. So Alana says, relaxed, open, positive energy and presence. Kelly says she wants to show up with passion and be excited to help people learn. I also want to be authentic, true to myself, and allow myself to not have to be perfect. I don't want to fake excitement and passion when I facilitate, right? So it isn't about like faking or being someone that you're not, right? I'm not trying to train people to like be me, right? Like I have a lot of energy, a lot of fire signs in me. I'm an Aries. And I think it's like being like the most embodied version of you. Right. So some people have like a really wise energy or a really curious energy or a really just like a presence. And I think that whatever that is for you, being really grounded in that and being really connected to that before you deliver anything, any live workshop, training, or event. I want to show up embodied in my passion, right? So really connecting to, I think it's like, why do we do what we do? And why does this matter? especially when you're leading, like if you have like these weekly meetings that can feel like, oh, maybe I'm just like going through the motions. How do I energetically like get re-energized around that, or get re-stoked? Or what specifically about this week or this meeting? And how can I make this fun for me as the person who's facilitating it, right? I always say, like, if I'm not having fun, I'm doing it wrong. Like, if I'm not having fun, it's probably pretty likely that other people are not having a good time, right? And so, so hopefully today, I'm going to give you some tools, tips, tricks on how to make things way more fun, way more engaging. Sound good? Can I get a thumbs up? Thumbs up on that? All right. Cool. Okay, so I'm checking my notes because I have like 9 pages and we don't have like all the time and all the land, but we're getting there. Like we're doing all the things. So, okay, I have one more. I keep saying I have one more question, but I just wish we were all in the same room because it would be so great. Why do you all think, okay, one more question for realties. I might have more. Why is interaction engagement so important for you and your work? Like what's the benefit of facilitating interaction and engagement in your workshops? So essentially we're addressing, like, why does this matter? Why does interaction and engagement matter to you and your work? Out of curiosity. And I'll share why it matters to me, but it's kind of like, I'm guessing you're here because it does. It does matter to you. I totally, you know how when you print things double-sided and then you're like, and then there's no page numbers and you're like, what order do these go in? Good thing I have numbers and letters. This is good. Well, some have numbers and letters. So as you're typing in the chat box, I'm looking at my notes. Okay, welcome. We did that. Intro, goals for today. It's great. Okay. Awesome. Okay. I think I figured it out. So why does it matter? People don't learn as much and it doesn't stick when it's not engaging. So true. I know what it feels like to sit through something that's not engaging, right? So I think that it's so funny. I think about all of the trainings and workshops that I've done, and I actually facilitated an event last night, and it was like a 2-hour-long event. It ended up being, I think, like, oh yeah, it was about 2 hours. And one of my biggest goals is to facilitate workshop trainings and meetings where people forget that they have a phone. People were like leaning in and so engaged the entire time. And I think that it's like, what are the signs you know you're leading a like effective, powerful workshop is like people aren't checking their phones, right? And that's always like my goal is people aren't, and actually I'm really good at time management typically, but my phone was in like the other side of the room because I was also super present, and we went over by like 20 minutes but people were like, no one was like, I gotta get out of here. Like no one was looking at their watches. Like it was awesome. And the guys that put on this event, they're like, we've never had people like stay that. And then even though I ended, no one wanted to leave. And so that's like my hope for you is that you create like the events and trainings where people don't want to leave. They forget that they have phones, and it's super great. And so I'm going to share with you some mindset things and some strategies on how to do that. Okay. So the first piece is like, I have some mindset things around, I don't ever like to assume, but one of my assumptions is that people want to engage. People want, like, if I approach every workshop or training like that, people want to connect, they want to engage, but they don't always know how to do that. And the power of the facilitator is being the guide in facilitating that engagement. But my assumption, my mindset is people are so hungry to engage and to connect. And that is where the power of a prompt comes in. And then we're going to be talking about just like giving people prompts, and they can be so simple, right? I gave you a lot of different prompts that you can use. You know, what inspired you to be here? Why is this important? What are the challenges you're facing around this? And all of those prompts can be partner share activities. They can be free write activities. But that the idea of like the assumption is that people want to connect. And I think that with interaction and engagement, I think the mindset too is not getting it right, not trying to get it perfect, but just holding that space where, you know, my assumption is that people are here to engage and connect. And the other part about that engagement is it's a huge part of adult learning theory. Meaning if I am not engaged in this interactive experience or this workshop, it's so easy for that information to float right over my head. That engagement helps me to connect what I am learning in this moment to my own experience. And that's why questions and prompts are so valuable and so important. And it's just like giving a reason and a way and a pathway for people to connect. And so that's kind of like the frame and the mindset and the perspective that I have going in is people want to connect, and I don't have to get it right. And I just have to show up and fully own whatever it is that I'm doing. So I'm going to walk you through some of my favorite interactive activities. And so one part, it's like part mindset, part strategy. So here are some of the strategies. And if you all raise your hand if you attended the masterclass. It was called Creative Activities to Engage Any Audience. Going to be sharing some similar things, but it's always good to like reinforce and reiterate and revisit some of these things. One of the best things that I do in my trainings and workshops that always just like, whoa, this is different. This is unique. And you may have heard me talk about this idea before, is called the unofficial start activity, right? So the unofficial start activity is when people, oftentimes there's events that's like, say doors open at 6 and the event starts at 6:30. And then there's just this like awkward 20 to 30 minutes of nobody doing anything or people awkwardly connecting. And so having like, I have these like question cards. I have all sorts of like versions of them where I hand people, and maybe it's a Stoke quote, all sorts of stuff in here. I have these like medium talk cards, and they all have like a question on them. Like, what's the most useless fact you know, or whatever, right? So those are some like silly questions. I have all of these question decks, and so giving people these cards as they're walking in, and like go find someone with a card, and that engages people right off the gate, and it sets the tone for, oh, this is going to be different. If you lead workshops or if you lead reoccurring meetings, like weekly meetings, you can use these as a go around, like a quick check-in at the beginning. Just like, hey, you know, what's your one sentence answer to the best part about my weekend was blank? Just a quick go around. And so doing something at the beginning of your meeting, I call it the unofficial start. And that's typically a quick engaging activity using prompts, again, the power of a prompt, where people are connecting right out the gate. I have like tons of these decks. So that's one fun one. And sometimes I have quotes around the room, and I say, go to the quote that you resonate with the most and meet the person who's also standing at that quote. So I call that the quote walk. So question cards, the quote walk is really great. And any sort of, like if you have a whiteboard, you can, any of the questions that I asked before, you can have a whiteboard that says like, any question really. It could be what inspired you to be here? What do you hope to learn today? And you can give them a Post-it note and they can write down on the Post-it note and put that on the wall. And so it's essentially creating engagement and interaction right away, because it's, again, it's a way to set the tone as people are walking, as people are arriving. So does that were those helpful? Can you make a list of all the decks you have? I just want to, if you have any questions about the unofficial start, you can put it in the chat box over there. Can you make a list of all the decks you have, what you think about them, and what situations and audiences they may be used for? Yes, I can definitely share some resources with you all about where I got the decks that I have. And a fun fact is I just ordered my very first and own set of question cards called the Connect Deck. I actually bought a domain a couple weeks ago called the Connect Deck, theconnectdeck.com. And I just ordered like batch 1 to see how they look before ordering a bunch of them. And so there's a website where you can make your own question cards. It's called makeplayingcards.com. I will definitely share those resources for those of you who signed up in when I send out the recording. So that's great. Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts about the unofficial start, and or has anyone done an unofficial start activity that worked really well in their events? I'm curious for those of you who have been on these classes before. Okay, I'm just checking my notes. So, okay. The unofficial start activities, the main intention there, so this is to create a friendly, welcoming, and warm vibe, right? And just to set the tone. The next one is the introduction activities, right? So these are all about creating connection, a sense of connection and belonging. I think I go to so many workshops where, you know, and it depends on how, like, the size of your group for sure. But like the first thing that they do is have everyone go around in a circle and do something, like introduce themselves. And that's like definitely one method. And I think that most people are often more comfortable at the beginning, especially if they don't know other people, to connect one-on-one or in small groups. And so I do this thing, and it's called the stranger walk, or people call it milling, or people call it like different things. But essentially, I have a series of questions that I invite people to connect with other people with, just one-on-one. And I can walk you through, you know, it's actually, I have it. So these were my notes from my session last night. I know that you can't see them, but I had, you know, we're going to circle up, we're going to do community agreements, and then this is my, I don't know if you can actually see this, but my stranger walk thing. You know, it's so funny. Last night I walked into this room and I'm like, I don't know if these people are going to play my games, but I was like, people are going to play my games and it's going to be great. And they totally did. And they had the time of their life. But the stranger walk is where people kind of mill about, and I have them go through this series of how they're interacting with the space. So the first round is they have their head down and they're not looking at anyone. And then I have them, as they're walking around, I give them a prompt. I give them something to think about. Again, the prompt, what inspired you to be here tonight? And as you're thinking about, you know, what inspired you to be here tonight, go back to back with someone, and I'm going to have you turn around, introduce yourself, and share what inspired you to be here tonight. And then after that, they share their thing, and then I give them a silly like handshake. So the handshake was like a business. So they did a business handshake. So that's like their business partner. And then I have them do this series of continuing to walk around the room. And the other note that I wanted to make, when you're doing interaction and engagement exercises like pair shares like this, is having a way to get their attention back after you've given them the prompt and practicing that. So a couple of my favorite ways to get people's attention back, I introduce people to my friends Bob and Weave. I oftentimes tell people that I am like legitimately a professional camp counselor. So that's part of my personal brand. That's part of my style. Some people, so Bob and Weave are the quiet coyotes. When the quiet coyotes come out to play, your quiet coyotes come out and everyone gets quiet. And so we get to practice that. And sometimes when I'm doing partner shares, I'll say, halfway through, I'll raise my hand. Or other times I've used like yoga or like little chime things, chimes. You can use music. I've done like, and a hush fell over the crowd, hush, and then everyone does that. Or if people know Vanilla Ice, you can do like ice, ice, baby, and then everyone goes na 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 na. So there's super silly ones, there's super playful ones. Sometimes I just do I let them know I'm gonna do a countdown, and what I'm just gonna do is towards the end of your time, your pair share is I'm gonna count down 3, 2, 1. And sometimes that's enough just to get the noise to go down. What you don't want to do is yell at people, because number one, people don't like to yell at. Number two is it hurts your voice. So the stranger walk, what I can do instead of going through each step of the stranger walk, I'm currently working on I'm calling it the Facilitation Playbook, which is like 10 powerful activities to engage any audience. This is one of them. I will make sure that I write this in the email that I send out to everybody for the recording of this masterclass, so that I can move through the other activities. But ways to do any way to do partner activities to create that sense of connection and belonging. And again, if you have reoccurring if you teach a class weekly or biweekly, or you lead a meeting, I think some of these things are just creating, I would say like creating rituals of like every day in class, you're going to meet someone new. That's what we're going to do. Or like every meeting, we're going to do a 1-word check-in, or we're going to do a 1-sentence check-in. It just gets people engaged. It gets people connected. It gets people super present. And so often people are in the same room, they're learning, they're leading, they're training together, and they're not connecting at all. And I think the relationships that get built are a huge part of creating a learning community where people do share and people do speak up and they do ask questions. So the more that you can create that environment where like this is just what we do and this is just a part of it, the more helpful it is for everyone. So we have the unofficial start activities. We have, some sort of introduction activities where people are connecting with each other in some capacity. And then the third one is, I call it reflection and let's call it reflecting activities. So if you are sharing content, asking them to reflect on what they've learned so far. This may be like super duper simple, but it's like, this is like hot tip as a facilitator. If you're ever like, oh crap, I don't know what's next, or I don't know what I'm doing, turn to a partner. What have you learned so far? That's it. What have you learned so far? Anytime you can create a space for people to reflect, they are more likely to use that information in the future. Reflection activities can be as simple, again, as turn to a neighbor, get into a group of 3, and they can be also like super silly. I mean, you can have people like make a skit of like what you've learned in class today, or write a song about it, or and if you don't want them talking, well, I mean, you can have them talk, but you can also do like a 60-second free write of like, what are like the top 3 things that you've learned in this workshop. So, I'm checking my other things of talking about reflection activities. Dun, 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 dun. Any questions about unofficial start, introduction activities, or reflection so far? Okay. I'm just looking at my notes. Okay, cool. Yeah, 60-second free write, turn to a neighbor. Cool. And then the final piece, like the fourth type of interactive activity, are some sort of a closing activity, right? So the closing activities, the idea is to create action and integration, to create that now what, or next steps. And so some of the questions can be around the idea of like, as a result of this workshop, what's something that you're going to do different? Or what's one action you're going to take in the next week that you're going to commit to taking in the next week as a result of this training? And then, this is good for meetings, right? Of like, okay, what are our next steps? So what are the actions we can take? A fun activity that I've done and seen done for making this like super fun is I call it the snowball fight. The snowball fight is everyone writes down one action you're going to take in the next week or month, and some way to get a hold of you, your phone number or your email address. And you write that on a piece of paper, right? So you write down your thing. I'm looking for a piece of paper that I can crumble up. Great. Perfect. So then they write it down. And so they have their action and their name and their way of getting hold of them. And then everyone picks up all these pieces of paper and are like throwing them all around. And then the invitation is that as a community, how do we hold each other accountable to actually taking action on these things? And so with whether it was a week or a month, that you are going to follow up with that person and hold them accountable, hold each other accountable, lift each other up. And so that's part of like the action and integration. How are they integrating this into their life? And then let's see. The other one that I do in almost like every training, every other event, Pam McPhee is in the house. Sorry, I just got really excited. Pam is like one of the people that inspires me to be a better facilitator all the time, every day. Thank you, Pam. I can definitely send you the recording. Just had to say that. We all have to have mentors, right? So the one that I use a lot, I call the 1 degree shift. And for those of you who are on my master classes a lot, you're like, broken record. But it's so good. It's so good, right? Metaphors are so powerful. The idea of the 1 degree shift is I oftentimes say, if you are on a sailboat and you change your course on that sailboat just 1 degree, over the course of hundreds of thousands of miles, you can end up in a completely different place. So sometimes when we're teaching, when we're leading, when we're facilitating, we can get inundated with a lot of information or a lot of inspiration, a lot of content. And some people leave feeling overwhelmed, like thinking I have to do everything or I have to change all of these things. And I always invite people to reflect on like, what's the one thing that you can do differently, the one thing that you can change, whether it's your mindset or a small action that you can take that's going to make the biggest difference for you over time. Because the most powerful and effective changes that you can make are the small, sustainable changes. I think that sometimes we want these big, drastic changes, but the small shifts, those small 1 degree shifts, and for you as a facilitator, my hope is that every one of these master classes that you can create, you can make for yourself, what's a 1 degree shift that you want to make as a facilitator, given the work that you do that you think would make the biggest difference for you. So what that does is it helps you reflect on, okay, here's all this information that I've received. How do I apply and integrate that? So that's a huge part of the reflection, the integration, the engagement is like I'm engaging with that material in a new way as I think about, okay, what's going to be different now that I attended this masterclass? Like what's going to be different when I go teach my next class? when I go lead my next meeting, when I lead my next workshop, and not try to go change everything that you do or how you do it, but what's the one thing that you learned today? So I'm going to put this actually on you as a kind of a closing prompt and question here before we do some Q&A, is what is your 1 degree shift going to be? What is your 1 degree shift going to be? So, whether it's that metaphor, whether it's a snowball fight, learning what are ways that you help people take action once they leave your trainings, your events, your retreats. So I'd love to hear in the chat box. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to verbally share your 1 degree shift. And as people are typing in, I'm going to reiterate the 4 different types of interactive activities are in order to create, the idea is to create interaction and engagement throughout your events. So it's not like having just oh, we're doing this one thing, but here are different ways. And some of these, based on your work, might resonate with you depending on the type of trainings and events that you lead. So unofficial start activities, introduction, community building activities, reflection activities, and then closing activities. So those are the 4 kind of components. And as I'm working on the facilitator's playbook of those 10 powerful activities, I'm going to make sure that I write all of these. So because I love doing these master classes, but I also want to provide ongoing support and resources for you. So I am in the process of creating that. And I'm really stoked about providing a resource, a go-to for you to be like, okay, I need an activity for this to kick off my event, to close my event, to keep people engaged throughout the experience. So those are the 4 types. And I want to reiterate is that facilitating interaction and engagement is both your mindset, your energy, your presence, your tone, your way of being in the world. And it's also having the tools in your toolbox. And as a facilitator, I'm the more tools I got, the better. But there's going to be tools. Sometimes you're going to use a hammer more than use a screwdriver or whatever. And using the tools that make sense for the type of house you're building, right? Using the tools that make sense for the type of events that you're facilitating. So Monka says, I'm going to ask myself more often, how do I want to show up, and design my fall workshop based on what I learned from you. Awesome. So as you're designing your workshop, incorporating some of the things that you've learned right on before you lead your workshops, asking, how do you want to show up? What are some other 1 degree shifts that people are going to make as a result of this training, this masterclass? I know that, man, the time flies so fast, and I have, there's lots of stuff that we can jam about, but I always like to make sure that my hope is that you get what you came here for, or you get something that you thought you needed, and you get something that you didn't even know that you needed. I say that at the beginning of a lot of my trainings and workshops, is that you get something that you know that you needed and something you didn't even know that you needed. Love the 1 degree shift concept and would like to incorporate that. Awesome. Yeah. So, I think the big part for transformational facilitation is finding ways to have people stay connected and engaged to you, to each other, to the material, to the content throughout. Haley's going to schedule her first class. How awesome is that? Scheduling your first workshops, trainings, getting them on the books, implementing this information, and hoping that really taking this and saying, how can I apply this to the work that I do? And what difference do you think? So one more question, and then we'll do some Q&A, and I'll share kind of some ways that we can continue learning and growing together. Is what if you did more interaction? If your workshops and trainings were more interactive and engaging than they currently are, what do you think would change or shift? What would be different as a result of that? So by doing more interaction and engagement. Oh, hey, lost my little we're doing pretty good with having the Facebook Live thing going. People are still watching, so that's good. What might be different? So Kelly says, you reminded me about another one of my favorite facilitators. She doesn't have as much energy as you, but she's still powerful. Someone to look up to. Yeah, so I think finding mentors, finding resources, finding the people that you connect with that resonate with you, and learning from each other. I would feel the energy from the group come back to me, right? Yeah, so when we're doing more of that interaction engagement, energy is totally up-leveled and increased. I have been to so many workshops where it feels like the facilitator's bored and is falling asleep, and it's like, and then everyone else is, and it's just like, why am I here? This is awful. So interaction engagement totally increases the energy. I think for you as a facilitator, it keeps it more interactive, fun, engaging for you, but also for the other people that you are serving. So with that, if you have questions about interaction and engagement type stuff or anything that I shared with you today, feel free to put it in the chat box. So as those questions are coming in, I wanted to share the link to our next masterclass to sign up for. And our next masterclass is all about the final pillar, the fifth pillar, which is about transformation and integration. So you can, that's the link, that was the link to sign up. So continuing to talk about, what is transformation and how do I facilitate that? I just put it twice. Awesome. Maybe more interaction would help add to the next workshop. You can learn something from anyone, right? So I think when you're doing more of those interaction and engagement exercises and activities, it takes some of the pressure off of you as a facilitator to have all the answers or to fill up the time or the space, but it gets people connected to and learning with and from each other, which is, so valuable, right? That idea of like more heads is better than one or whatever. I think as a collective and as a community, we're so much more powerful together. And one of my goals is to continue to build a community of facilitators so that you can get support and mentorship and guidance from me, from each other. And so we do have a Facebook group. If you're not on that, I would love for you to join us. You can type in transformational facilitators. I am going to put the link to that Facebook group in the link below. And I was sharing with some other folks, Transformational Facilitators Community. Here we go. I'm posting the link here in the chat box. So that's the Facebook group. It's a free group where I share videos, resources, ongoing things. And then I'm also hosting live trainings and events. One is called Facilitator Camp. It's a immersive 4-day facilitation training with me, 10 other facilitators. The first one ever is happening October 4th through 7th on the Oregon coast, and it is currently full, which I'm jazzed about. I got people flying in from Jersey, from California, from all over the place. Really, really looking forward to that. The next facilitation retreat, training retreat, I like the idea of facilitator camp because I'm like the camp counselor, right? Is going to be February 7th through 10th. That's like, those are the tentative dates. If you're interested in attending any of the live training, just let me know. You can put interested or, send me, I'm make sure that everyone who signs up for my masterclass, I keep, I have an email list of facilitators. So if you're interested in that, just reach out and let me know. I love doing these masterclasses virtually. I also love doing live trainings and events to continue to support you. So with that, that's a wrap. I want to make sure that I honor your time. Some of you are on a lunch break. I know that you have things to do, places to go, things, all of that. But I am super, super grateful for your time, your energy, your attention. So next steps are to sign up for the next masterclass, which is on October 11th, I believe. And then join the Transformational Facilitators Facebook group. And if you're interested in coming to the next retreat, February 7th through 10th, you can email me. I'll say that. Email me at marli@marliwilliams.com. There's no commitment. I'm just curious who's interested. I'm just gaining interest in who would like that. And one of the other things that I'm doing that is super exciting is I'm actually going into other companies and organizations and training their leaders and managers how to actually facilitate, because a lot of people don't know how to do that. So if that's something that you want to bring me in for, doing like professional development training, that's something that I love to do, love to offer as well. So with that, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to end the recording here, but I will stay on for more Q&A if you have specific questions. And until next time, take care. All right, let's do